David Montemorano. I'm the general manager for United Airlines here, for those of you that don't know. Thank you so much to all of our guests who made it out here today to celebrate Black History Month. This is absolutely amazing. All of this that was brought over, thank you for doing that.
Always amazing.
What's that?
Your hallway is amazing.
You liked our hallway. So let me take a moment and talk about the LGA Unity crew, okay? Newly formed organization here this year, really to celebrate diversity amongst our work group, took the initiative, like the Unity crew to come up, members of the Unity crew, took the initiative to make that tribute that's in the hallway, that amongst other things, so, and to put together this event. They organized several fundraising events also to make this event a reality. So special thanks to this group right here, going above and beyond, making it happen. The LGA Unity Crew. All right, so I know we have a jam-packed agenda. We have amazing food, some awesome drinks over there. The music was great coming in. I'm sure it's going to get even better. But I'm going to turn it over to Cedric, who's, I believe, our master of ceremonies for today, to just go ahead and tell us a little bit about what we're going to see today.
Thank you. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Y'all are amazing. I did not expect that applause there. All right, so again, I want to say thank you for each and every one of you guys for coming out. It's truly an honor to have so many great members of the chapter here in New York of the Tuskegee Airmen. It's a great honor to have the band we have. We have a comedian here. We're going to have a lot of fun, a lot of great food, some entertainment, get a really good history lesson about the Tuskegee Airmen, which I am thrilled to hear about. I had a... hello? Batteries is dead?
Battery's not dead.
Are we there? All right, can you guys hear me? I don't hear.
Yes.
All right, so it's going to be interesting. I'm excited to hear about it because I have a family member of mine who is a member of the Tuskegee Airmen. So this will be a great history lesson for myself as well as everybody there. Right now, we're going to turn it over to our band. We do have an opening song as we celebrate this Black History Month with Lift Every Voice and Sing. So those of you that are able to stand, please stand, and we will have the band take us off course. After that, it'll be a musical performance, also by the band.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with the harmonies of liberty. Ever rejoicing rise high as the sings rise. Let every sound tell victory is won.
Just want to say that we do have a raffle that's available right here. So if you get the opportunity, grab a, see Mr. Craig Ripley, get a ticket. He didn't know, but yeah, see Craig, get a ticket so you can enter the raffle. And what we're raffling off are some model airplanes. I believe that Craig himself has designed and put together. They're really, really nice. Also, if you look behind DDR, you will see that there's a display of lovely art that is on display, and we do have Miss Ebony.
So let's split it a little. So let's make an introduction of all the guests that we have.
Did you take the mic out my hand?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. So we have quite a few different diversity, as we call the LaGuardia Unity team. So we have diverse from every walks of life, of every genre.
They can't hear you.
Be quiet.
She can't hear you.
So, okay, much better now. Okay, so just that we can get all of our guests enumerated, so this way we can get it going. We have Makisha.
Copy of the conference.
Okay. keep going. We have our Tuskegee descendant. We'll get back to Motisha when Motisha gets there. She's going to get Motisha. Miss Pat, one of our descendants. We also has Miss Dennis Lewis. Sorry, I apologize. Those are the direct descendants from Tuskegee, from a couple of our Tuskegee Airmen. So we will have a presentation for us. We also have Mr. Renard, who's part of the Tuskegee Museum in New York City, who will also be holding a presentation for us. Next page.
We're all hurry.
What page is your pages on?
Haven't got snowed.
All right, so as I was saying before he took the mic, this art behind us is going to be presented and explained by Miss Ebony here. It's lovely, it's digital art. She's going to come up and explain it. Also, we do have someone who's so much better at the community presentation than I am, Miss Miko Mo from Queens, New York. I mean, she is a queen in Queens, so you know it's only fitting. Also, we do have Mr. Marlin, who has a mocktail menu, who's so gracious enough to provide some great refreshments for us. Mocktail. So make sure we get that in. All right, and also again, I want to introduce and say thank you to this amazing band we have. Our papers are out of display. I'm sorry. I'm going to tell you the name of them in a second. Here we go. You're late. We have Mr. Sam Vance. Is it Odysseus? Odysseus. All right. Mr. Chris Perez and Mr. Aaron Ruperto.
Hey, you said it right. Yes.
Thank you. So, with that being said, they're going to give us some more tunes. We have food that's presented by United LGA crew, as well as donations from everyone around with the United organization. Without the help of you guys with the bake sale helping us out, we wouldn't be able to have none of this, so we thank you for that. Right now, we're going to...
Neaterville, everyone.
Right now, we're going to start with a presentation. You want to go ahead and introduce?
So we're going to start with a presentation with Mr. Renard Burns, who's part of the Tuskegee Museum. So they're going to have a quick little presentation for us. Thank you.
Yes, my name is Renard Burns, and I'm here with Pat Terlong and Denise, who are descendants of Tuskegee Airmen. Also, Saeed Copeland, who's back here running our media. So I want to make a shout out to all of them. I appreciate your invitation for us to come and share the history about the Tuskegee Airmen. I'm going to show some things up here with a presentation that's going to go through the history of aviation for blacks in the United States. We have Eugene Villard. During World War I, he fought for the French. He was actually in the infantry first. And he was wounded so many times that they said, you can't fight for us anymore because you're just have been wounded in too many battles. So he decided he was going to try out for the French Air Corps, which he made it, and he became a flying ace. He was known as the Black Swallow of Death because he was so good at what he was doing. When it came time to, and the United States entered World War I, the airmen that were fighting over there came back to the United States to join the Army Air Corps who was fighting at that time. He tried, and they said, no, you cannot, because of the color of your skin. You are not able to join this. So he went back and continued to fly for the French. He earned many awards, fine recognition, years as an operator, but that was his life afterwards. But he was refused, despite his efforts and his accomplishments for the French in World War I, to serve in the United States. Thank you. I have been updated. He became a French legionnaire in World War II. Yes. Bessie Coleman was a female black pilot. She tried to fly for anybody who would take her, and they said, no, you cannot. She became a leader. Her great-grandniece, I believe, is still touring the country doing presentations about Bessie Coleman and the strides she made. So there is a history of black flight that was way before the Tuskegee Airmen.
Order 9. Gate 1.
I'm pausing in between. This is something that's a driving force for the Tuskegee Airmen and anyone in the air who attempted to fly for the United States. The Army War College in 1925 said their statement was that the term Negro at that time was incapable of operating machinery, flying. They lacked the intelligence, the courage, the fortitude, and just the drive to operate any machinery, to fly, to do anything other than serve as in maintenance or as food service. And this is the driving force that led the military all the way through from 1925 until the end of World War II. And the Tuskegee Airmen had to face this wherever they went. When they attempted to fly, when they attempted to join, and even when they served, their superior officers had this same mentality. You can't do this, so I don't expect you to have it. You can see some of the statements in here. The process of evolution, Negro has not progressed this far. And this is just one of the statements in a multi-page statement from the Army War College that was just, it's upsetting to read. It's upsetting that some of these things are still viewed as correct. I'm just giving you a chance to read these statements because I'd rather have you see it yourself than have me talk about it, because these are the actual excerpts from that statement, War College statement. Number 13 at the bottom was about when eventually they became officers later in their service. They were not saluted. Any officer in the armed services was supposed to be saluted by enlisted men. They were not. Regardless of cover, the white enlisted men did not salute. The other officers did not salute the Tuskegee Airmen, even though they were officers. As an aside, there was a unit, I don't know if you've heard of them, but the Harlem Hellfighters fought in World War I. There was a blank unit of infantrymen that could not join the United States Army. They didn't want them. So they were taken in by the French because the French wanted anybody that could fight for them. They were trained by the French, armed by the French, and they got their title not from the French, not from the Americans, but from the Germans, the Harlem Hellfighters, because they did not give up. They fought until the battle was won, but there was no one left. All right? They're fighting 369. They were in World War I, World War II, but they served under the French flag in World War I. Training in years. There's a picture here, and I'll go into more detail here. The person in the seat, in the second seat there, is Eleanor Roosevelt. Her influence with the Tuskegee Airmen, and her statement to her husband, the president, at that time was instrumental in starting the Tuskegee Airmen and having that opportunity for black pilots to join the armed services. 1939, seeing that, understanding that the United States was eventually going to be pulled into World War II, the ruling people, the president included, decided that there weren't enough pilots in the United States. So they opened up this opportunity for a civilian pilot training program. And they opened up several colleges to host flight training. Tuskegee was one of those, and several other black colleges. In 1939, it became an act, an official law that this is going to happen, and anybody could fly. But they picked, in 1940, the Selective Service Act went into place, when the Selective Service was the first time that there was a peacetime draft, and anyone can serve in the U.S. military. They didn't specify whether it would be in the same unit, but anyone was able to serve if they so desired, a Selective Service. 1940, the White House announced that Negroes will be trained as military pilots. They will be trained. It did not happen yet. There are other things that influenced the start of the Tuskegee Airmen. One was Eleanor Roosevelt. She went down to Tuskegee, which was a very segregated community. And Tuskegee already had a university, and they already had a flying program and an air base, a field. She went down there because she wanted to know. Everyone said they are not able to fly. She went down, and that is Chief Anderson, who's sitting in the front seat. The front seat is normally the person who's a passenger sits. The pilot sits in the back. But for this picture, Eleanor Roosevelt sat in the back, so it looked like she was the pilot for this. In any case, she said, I want you to take me up for a flight. Can you do that? Her Secret Service unit said, no. And she said, yes, I'm going. So she got in that plane and didn't fly around the field once, but she actually took a tour. She was going for at least an hour, and there was no security, no nothing. She came back and said, you can fly. He goes, yes, I can. She had that picture taken, so she could take it back to Washington and show her husband, see, they can fly. She wanted to disprove that theory and that statement that blacks were not able to fly. She later went down and took some fundraisers and supporters down that funded the completion of Moulton Field. Tuskegee was eventually chosen, one for its location, one for it already had a pilot program in place, and it was to be segregated. It was in an extremely segregated town. Tuskegee, the airmen said, I rarely went into town because it was too risky. So they stayed on base. But they were trained in Tuskegee, Alabama at Tuskegee Army Airfield.
They were pioneers who blazed a trail through the war-torn skies over Europe. Before the Tuskegee Airmen of World War II, no black American had ever been a U.S. military pilot. After the Tuskegee Airmen, the U.S. military would never be the same. Widespread discrimination prevented African Americans from flying during the First World War. For the next 20 years, the pressure would slowly build to allow black pilots to serve in the sky. Finally, in 1941, the Army launched what it called an experiment, the segregated 99th Fighter Squadron. That squadron would train at an airfield near Tuskegee Institute in Alabama, and thus the Tuskegee Airmen were born. To be clear, not every airman was a pilot. For every man who flew, there were 10 keeping him in the air, men and women, military and civilian, who served on ground duty support, like mechanics, supply personnel, cooks, and more. And not all were black. Some were white, or Latino, or Native American. One notable woman who helped the Tuskegee Airmen take off into history was the First Lady of the United States. Eleanor Roosevelt visited the squadron in 1941 and insisted a black pilot take her up, and that photographs would be taken. These photographs helped convince President Franklin Delano Roosevelt to send the unit into action, first in North Africa and later in Europe. The 99th, along with other squadrons, would later form the 332nd Fighter Group in Europe, their planes boasting tails painted bright red. In Europe, the airmen would fly more than 15,000 sorties, completing an unequaled 1,500 combat missions, all while showing great courage, skill, and dedication. Among their decorations, 150 distinguished flying crosses. Squadron leader Benjamin O. Davis Jr. would eventually rise to the rank of 3-star general, receiving a 4th star post-retirement. The Tuskegee Airmen were deactivated in 1946. The experiment a great success, but more than that, the brave flyers had proved themselves in combat, and their performance helped pave the way for desegregation of the military in 1948. Today, the National Park Service's Tuskegee Airmen National Historic Site in Alabama helps tell their story and preserves their memory for all time.
I wanted to play that because that is the official government version. It glazes over some of the things that happened. when the Tuskegee experiment, as it was called at that time, because it was an experiment, they wanted to see if it would work. There were 13 cadets in the first class. They had to have a college education, at least be enrolled in college. They were the cream of the crop. It was very selective. There was an understanding that there would be a quota system. The government did not want too many to succeed, so they would arbitrarily get people to not succeed in the program. The final graduating class from this 13 was only 5 that graduated. Among those 5 was Benjamin O. Davis. Benjamin O. Davis, as mentioned, became the eventual commander of the Tuskegee Airmen. He had to face his own trials. He graduated from West Point in 1936. His whole time there, he was not spoken to. He ate alone. He did everything else alone. The only time that anyone at West Point interacted with him during the 4 years was when he was in class or if it had to do with his education. Any other time, he was completely alone. He endured 4 years because he refused to give up. I'm going to graduate, and he graduated among the top in his class. He never returned to West Point, even though there is now a barracks, Benjamin O. Davis Barracks, which was dedicated several years ago. But Benjamin O. Davis endured that because he knew he could do better. His father was a general with the Army, but Benjamin O. Davis Jr. himself said, "I am not giving up." And he led eventually the Tuskegee Airmen with that same motto: nobody stops, you continue to go. This is the first class, the Tuskegee Experiment, as it was called. Later it was changed by the Tuskegee Airmen to the Tuskegee Experience. So it wouldn't be confused with another horrific thing that happened in Tuskegee, the Tuskegee Experiment, where the government intentionally infected blacks with syphilis and didn't tell them there was a cure. They said it would be okay. And that went on for years. But that's why the change from experiment to experience. This is a graduating class. Upper left is Benjamin O. Davis, when he graduated in 1941. 41, 42. One of those. Training was by blacks. Their commanding officers happened to be white, but Colonel Parrish was very much in favor of the program. It was through him that the program made strides to become better. The Tuskegee Experiment, they mentioned going to Tunisia in 1943. Yes, they were deployed to Tunisia in 1943, eventually, after their training. However, it does not say that it took a long time before anyone wanted to serve under their command. They trained, and they trained, and they trained again, until eventually someone said, okay, you can come over and fight. They flew P-40s. Get that here. That's not one of them, but a P-40, which was an antiquated plane. If you remember the Flying Tigers, well, that's what they flew. Those people who fought in China, the Flying Tigers, those were P-40s. The planes were not quick. They were not that maneuverable. And they didn't get the cream of the crop, big planes. They would get what was left over, and they would scavenge several planes to get one that worked. Their record exceeded any other unit that was flying in Tunisia. They were protecting and flying ground cover over Anzio beaches, protecting our servicemen on the ground. They did so well that they eventually got the opportunity for something else. And if you have not seen the movie Red Tails, please go and see it. They had to fight for that position and to defend the bombers of the 15th Air Force. The 15th Air Force were flying bombing missions over Europe. They were flying the Flying Fortress, the B-17. It's bristling with guns. And they believed that if they flew these planes in formation, a box formation, they could not be attacked successfully because of all the guns, top, bottom, front, back, all concentrated would be able to fight off any fighters that were attacking them. That may have been the thought. However, the German fighters had different type of gunnery. These had 50 caliber machine guns. The German had 2mm cannons, which had a much further range. A good friend of mine, who's also in our chapter, shared with us that he had spoken to a German pilot. They said, we just sat back and fired out of their range. First we took out the gunnery, then we went for the wings, which held their fuel tanks, and then they went in for the kill. The fighters that were supposed to be protecting them were more interested in becoming aces, which means that they would get an ace on their plane after they shot down so many enemy planes. So when the Germans appeared and started to come in, they would go after them and leave the bombers unprotected. Each bomber had a crew of 10. If they had a formation of 4 or 5 blocks of bombers, there were probably 8 to 10 bombers in each one, and 10 in each bomber. Each mission, prior to the Tuskegee Airmen, would lose 40 to 50% of their bombers on every mission. The mortality rate was too high. The Tuskegee Airmen came in and said, we can protect the bombers. They were given the opportunity, and they became attached to the 15th Air Force. Benjamin Over Davis, who is in charge now, said to his pilots, you will not leave the bombers under any circumstances. No matter who shows up, you stay there and protect the bombers. The Germans tried to attack, and they sat out there and waited. The fighters did not leave. They stayed. The mortality rate for the bombers went way down. Did they lose some bombers? Yes. But their percentage of bombers lost was significantly lower than any other squadron that protected them. So they earned their record there. Still, they were expected to fail. They waited to the last minute to tell them, oh, you're escorting them. And I don't mean the last minute like a day before. They could say the morning of, gas up, you're leaving. And they would have to go. The planes they eventually came up with were far superior to the P-40s. These are the P-51. P-51 was the Rolls-Royce at that time. They could fly 400 miles an hour. For a propeller-driven plane, that was amazing. They were maneuverable. The airmen themselves said, this is a pleasure to fly. I can do anything I want with this. It's easy to fly. It's comfortable to sit in. It's the best I can ask for. Roscoe Brown, in one of the interviews I had with him, I asked him about flying. He said flying was just a release. You got in the air, and there was nobody around. There was no prejudice. There was no nothing. I didn't have to talk to anybody. I just got up there and flew and did my job. This is a picture of Benjamin O. Davis in front of one of the planes that they flew, a P-47 Thunderbolt. They flew several different planes, the P-40, the P-47, and the P-51. Yes, I'll get to those in a minute. There's Benjamin O. Davis in later days. This is William Johnson. William Johnson lived in Glen Cove most of his life. He went to Glen Cove High School. He graduated from Glen Cove. And in his statement, this is a little recording of him I made on his porch prior to his passing away. And some things you're going to see as he speaks, how excited he was to become an airman, how excited he was to go to Tuskegee and see those planes flying over his head on his first day.
I call it the adventure with the Tuskegee Airmen as the second greatest adventure in my life for several reasons. Because I did what I wanted to do, I did the impossible, okay? The opportunity wasn't there for blacks to fly. They say blacks cannot fly. But the door cracked open and I walked through, me and others. And the wonderful men that I trained with were wonderful young men, okay? I guess it was because we were all of the same ilk, more or less. We were ambitious, we wanted to do things, we had our pride, okay? From there I went to Tuskegee Army Airfield in Alabama, okay? And me and a number of other PACs, they call us PACs, pre-aviation cadets. And we got there and we were housed in the building. And I think on D-Day, I got to D-Day. And I was so happy. Because when I got there and I went down to the flying line, etc., and when I saw those black pilots come down and swoop down and buzz the field and go up and down and make a slow roll or snap roll, etc., I was so excited. I said, that's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to do.
I can still see the excitement on your face.
Okay, certainly was. I was so proud, and so happy, okay, to be there. And because that's what I wanted for a long period of time. Like I said before, growing up and looking at the skies there when I was a youngster, they wouldn't allow blacks to fly. I knew no matter how many planes I saw flying over military planes, I knew there were no blacks in there.
His experience is something that is unusual. He was a class of 45I. 45I never got a chance to join the war. The war was over before they graduated. They were given a choice to remain in service and finish or leave. He decided to leave, as did many other trainees at that time, because they said, we've seen enough. Our whole reason for being here was to join the fight with everybody else. Since there's no more fight, we don't need to be here. I'm going to backtrack a little bit, because I think you need to know this. Many of the airmen, when they joined, came to go for training to Tuskegee, were from the north or from the west. And they hadn't experienced what it was like to cross that line into the south. They received tickets to go. They got tremendous treatment as they got on the trains heading towards Tuskegee. They got to a point where they had to switch trains. And they were told, oh, you can't sit here. You have to sit in the front with the other colors. Sitting in the front at that time meant you sat behind a cold fuel engine. So you would get all the soot on you. The whites were moved to the back, away from that experience. They weren't allowed to disembark from the train with everyone else. They had to go somewhere else. Their transportation to the field was different. But they said it was in one of the previous movies I have, which I didn't bring today, is a statement that says, it was like we had gone to another country. Because the experience was just the opposite of what they were used to seeing. And that was their experience in Tuskegee. They were afraid to head into the town of Tuskegee for fear for their lives. This is a P-40, what it looks like, or what it may have looked like in flight over Tunisia. It was flying straight emissions. And here is a picture of the planes that the airmen flew. Not to compete with the display outside. Right? We're not competing with that at all. There's one plane missing. It's a B-25. There was the 477th Bombardment Unit. They were Tuskegee Airmen trained for twin engines. They flew and were trained on B-25 bombers in the United States. They never got a chance to fly in the war. By the time they were finished, supposedly with their training, the war was over. Detained, they were kept in training, and they had to fight for something on this side of the ocean. Hence the term double victory. Victory in Europe, victory at home. The 477th, during their training, were transferred to several different air bases. One air base, Colonel Selworth was in command. He said, you're going to go, and even your officers, you cannot go to the officers club. You're going to go to this other club, which turned out to be pretty much a warehouse. And he said, no, we're going to the regular officers club. So they said, we're going to go. They tried and they were turned away. So they organized a procedure to try. We're going to send so many every day. 6 of you go today, they'll be turned away. You 6 go tomorrow. They got turned away. They kept going and kept going and kept going. They were asked to sign a release, pretty much, saying, we agree with separate quarters for our officers' quarters. There will be one for officers and one for trainees. They were called trainees, so they said. They were not trainees, they were officers. They refused to sign, which at that time was a direct disobedience of an order. That was punishable by death because it was wartime. They were arrested, sent to another camp, and put behind a barbed wire fence. 101 members of the Tuskegee Airmen said, I am not signing. They knew they could be killed. They said, I'm still not signing. Well, the media got hold of it, the NAACP got hold of it, and other activists got hold of it. And they said to the Army, you can't do this. So they reversed it, except for 3. 3 of them had forced their way in, so they said, into the white officers' club. One of them, Colonel Terry, accidentally hit one of the guards on the way in. They immediately arrested them, and they were charged with jostling, is the term. They went to trial. 2 of them were acquitted. Colonel Terry was drummed out of the airport. He received a dishonorable discharge. It was on his record. That record was not changed until 1993, was it? Yeah. President Clinton expunged his record. In the meantime, at that time, because he had received a dishonorable discharge, he was a felon. There were jobs he could not get. There were things he could not do. So his entire life changed from 1945 to 1993 because he said, we're not doing this anymore. Because I want to tell you about this mission before it comes up on the screen. This is the mission in 1945 to Berlin. The 15th Air Force was going deep into Berlin to bomb plants that were building armament tanks and all kinds of things. It's the furthest mission into Germany that had ever been done. The Tuskegee Airmen were asked to fly the first leg escort. Another unit was supposed to pick it up and finish the escort into Berlin. Prior to going, the Tuskegee Airmen had fuel tanks to take them a little bit further. It was already a long-range fighter, but they needed larger fuel tanks to travel the longer distance. The Army Air Force said, no, you're not at the top of the food chain, so you just go with what you have. They found out that there was a train sitting not too far away that had the right size fuel tanks on it. So they decided to do a midnight raid, and they went to those train cars and acquired these fuel tanks, and then modified the wings on the fighters so that these fuel tanks would fit. The next morning they took off with the larger fuel tanks, which came in handy. The other squadron that was supposed to meet them on the way to Berlin didn't make it. For some reason, they were not at the rendezvous point. The airmen had to make a choice. We continue to escort the bombers or turn around. To escort the bombers the rest of the way meant some of them would run out of fuel to get back. They would not make it back. We decided we're going the rest of the way. We were brought in to guard the bombers, and they said we will. On this trip into Berlin, Germany started to use a new plane. It was a jet fighter. Roscoe Brown, who was one of the squadron commanders on this particular trip, had the opportunity to confront one of these in Berlin, over Berlin. He shot down the first one. 2 more were shot down on that mission. The German fighters eventually left, remembering that the P-51 had roughly a 400-mile-an-hour speed. The jets had at least a 150-mile edge on them. But because of their experience, their tenacity, and their ingenuity, they were able to outmaneuver these jets, not by trying to go against them, but finding another way to get them in front of their guns that they could fire and take them down. Yes, I wanted to tell you that before you saw this, because I think that information is kind of important when you see what happens.
March 24th, 1945, U.S. Army Airfield, Ramitelli, Italy. Pilots from America's first all-black fighter group were called to the briefing room. Their mission? Escort B-17 bombers on the first leg of an attack on Berlin. Their direct orders? Protect the bombers at all costs. Halfway through the mission, something went wrong.
We were supposed to be relieved by a white fighter group, and they didn't show up because they had weather problems.
Knowing they'd be pushing their fuel supplies to the limit, the fighter pilots stuck with the bombers and headed to Berlin. As the warplanes approached the target, they suddenly came face to face with the enemy. One of Hitler's secret weapons, the world's first jet fighters.
And they tell you you have the best fighter plane in the sky, and all of a sudden you see a couple of fellas come flying rings around you, and there's nothing you can do about it. That's a pretty helpless feeling.
But as the fighter pilots took on Nazi jets in the skies over Berlin, back home on the ground, their brothers in arms were fighting a very different battle by taking on the United States military itself.
Segregation seemed to be the #1 aim of the Army.
When they turned us out of the officers' club, they said, "You have an officers' club. It's right over there. It's a barracks with a ping pong table."
We called it Uncle Tom's Cabin.
We decided to take a stand. It was a matter of pride and a matter of just reaching the end of our rope.
Together, the black aviators in Europe and those in America would wage a two-front war against fascism and racism and help pave the way for a civil rights movement yet to come.
These are the 477th members as they're lined up, being ready, getting ready to board buses and be taken to another place where they were interned. The Tuskegee Airmen story is something that in history doesn't have the impact that it should have, and is beginning to come out now. Many of the things they faced and tackled were preceded the civil rights movement here in America. Airman Johnson spoke to me once and said they were expected to fail. The program was going to be ended when he went to Tuskegee, and that was on D-Day. What changed it was the Battle of the Bulge. The Battle of the Bulge came up, and all of a sudden they said, the war's not over yet. We're going to need more pilots. So they maintained the program. They kept it going. The 477th did not get a chance to fly in Europe. And speaking with some of the men who were in the 477th, their feeling was that it was okay to shoot down pilots, white planes, white pilots, but it was not okay for black pilots to drop bombs on white people on the ground. So they were kept in training. When World War II or VE Day came around, they were all of a sudden released. Okay, you can go fly, just send you over to Japan. You can bomb there. It was okay to bomb them. The war ended before they got a chance to get over there and join that fight. But they still fought their own on the terms with that, the Freeman Field Mutiny, they called it. The post-war impact, integration of the armed forces, 1948, President Truman, building New York City. Alton Burton, in the room of the World Trade Center. Alton Burton was the chief engineer in the construction of the World Trade Center. He was hired by Rockefeller And he insisted that the foundation and the structure and the materials used in the World Trade Center be sturdier than what the plans called for. Thanks to his insistence of the use of those, the World Trade Center did not collapse on impact. It stayed up another hour to allowing more people to get out. But nobody knows that. It was a Tuskegee Airman that insisted that the structure be built with this material, this way, because he was feared about wind for a structure that tall affecting the building itself, too much sway. So I want more reinforcement. That reinforcement allowed those towers to stay up longer, allowing more people to get out. Civic leadership. Roscoe Brown started Bronx Community College. He went on to have a TV show with CCNY. He had quite a few other things that he did. He's a resident of New York City, Sag Harbor. Legacy preservation. Of course, we're here to keep that legacy going. And I thank Denise, Pease, see, I'm still here, and Pat, to keep it going for us. Because the rest of us need to know that and keep that information going. Not enough people going, and like anything else, if you don't hear about it, it disappears. The first African American to fly for United Airlines, 1965, William Norwood.
When I was in the 7th grade, our principal came to my school. We were an all African American school. His name was William Harold Walker, and he was a Tuskegee Airman. And anytime he would talk about flying, he would light up. And I thought so much of him, he became my mentor. So that's the way I got interested in aviation. When I came with United as the first African American pilot, a lot of people were not as receptive as probably should have been. Because I came to United, I had 1,700 hours. And at that time, they were hiring pilots with less than 200 hours. And some of the ones I was in class with had 200 hours, and they thought, I think, that I was an affirmative action hire until I told them that the airplane they flew in, which was a 172, would fit under one wing of the B-52 I had flown. I've logged over 25,000 flight hours, yes. I flew this exact airplane as a captain. I flew about 8 trips with it. Well, I'll tell you what, it was something I had never thought of, and it was a terrific honor. And the other thing I like about it is that this airplane and the museum is in the middle of the south side of Chicago, where we have a minority population surrounded by it, and they are able to come in here. So I think it's an outstanding location in a tremendously effective and interactive museum.
There was only one Tuskegee Airman who became a commercial pilot. 1965, he flew for Frontier Airlines. This all started with a lawsuit that started in 1963. There was a black pilot who wanted to fly for commercial airlines. They said no. So he filed a lawsuit. It took 1.5 years for that suit to get settled. 1965, United Airlines hires, Frontier Airlines hires. There was only one Tuskegee Airman that ever flew a commercial flight. But they came back from the war, despite all of their hours of flying and all of their ability. Commercial airlines said, no, you cannot fly for us. I'm sorry, but that's not it. They didn't even say sorry, they just said no, goodbye. Jobs that were open, Postal Service, MTA, and they went back to school to get their education using the GI Bill. They became engineers, educators, leaders of the community, leaders of the country. They didn't give up, they didn't stop, they continued their service because that's who they were. They don't give up, they didn't give up. Their message on all of their presentations to school children Don't stop. Get an education and do not give up.